When she gets in trouble, she knows she can come ask for help. But, I can't watch her 7x24, nor should I. Not so much an obligation. We do work with law enforcement to explain how Tor works and how Tor does not work. And law enforcement are one of our largest users. There's all the normal people. We've had 120 million downloads of Tor in the past 12 months. And there are a huge number of law enforcement officers out there relying on Tor every day. One, because they have to do criminal investigations without disclosing who they are and where they're coming from. It's tough to be a 12-year-old girl if you're coming from FBI.gov. The criminals pick up on that really quickly. At the same time, they want to do something at lunch. They want to go out and look for, an anniversary present for their wife, a birthday present for their kids. They just don't want the corporate IT watching them all the time. Two, many of the organized crime officers have to worry about their family far more than they have to worry about themselves, because the organized crime will go after their families first. And when your kids are on Facebook and chat and explaining, I'm checking in on Foursquare and all these other technologies, it starts giving you a clear pattern of where your kids are, where to get them, and how to put leverage and pressure on you as the law enforcement agent. So we do work with law enforcement. I've worked with a number of law enforcement investigations, mostly involving human trafficking and domestic violence, and explaining how the technology works, what it's capable of, and what the abuser is not able to do with our software. And that, all sorts of magical attributes are attributed to Tor. And, in some ways I wish that was true, but the reality is that it's not. And in almost every case, the abuser has slipped up, or the pimp has slipped up, and left a clear trail to who they are, whether it's financial, electronic, or, by just advertising on various websites. Right, we don't have any information to give. That's the first goal of our operation, is that we don't want user information, because it becomes really interesting to a huge number of people, many of which we just don't ever want to be in bed with. We are funded currently we're funded by the US and Swedish governments, and places like the Knight Foundation and Ford Foundation. I do. Thankfully, governments are not monolithic entities, and just like corporations are not monolithic entities, people, individual departments have their own mandates and missions. And one of our funders is the State Department, and they're all about democracy and human rights, and training labor activists and training democracy activists on how to get online safely. And this is, in direct conflict to even some of the law enforcement agencies we work with. Some of us view us as friendly, some of us view us as suspicious, but they still work with us because they realize they have to. Because, as the NSA has said, our technology is unbreakable and works. I'm not going to say it will never be unbreakable, but right now it seems to be very difficult for both super sophisticated agencies to break into, as it would for super sophisticated criminal organizations to break into. So law enforcement feels they should be using Tor for all the reasons they hate Tor, the same reasons they want to use it. So you promote the good uses, you encourage the good uses, you work with law enforcement to stop the bad uses. What's been interesting, in particular about Silk Road, has been the health sector and the mental health sector have come out and said this is actually a fine example of how much of a demand there is for regulation of drugs, as opposed to just punishment for possession or usage. And that if a hidden service, which frankly becomes difficult for the average person to figure out how it works, how to use it, how to get bitcoins, how to get onto it, and all that, if people are willing to go through those 14 hoops to get a dime bag of weed or something, that shows there's a huge demand out there. And imagine if you could tax it and treat it as a service problem. At the same time, it helps uncover a lot of the edge people. Everyone thinks of, it's funny, well, so the story there is the BBC did this big story on Silk Road where they actually bought cocaine from some vendor on Silk Road. And they did a big story where they showed this guy in the lab saying, this stuff is pure. You don't get this stuff off the street. This is like straight from the factory. And the BBC forum was overwhelmed with like 50 to 100,000 comments about awesome. And now I know where to get my drugs safely without having to pay some teenager to be a proxy for me, and without having to risk myself and my public persona being exposed. And I don't have to go into these sketchy, scary parts of town to buy my drugs. And law enforcement at the same time has said, well, we watch the mail systems, we know what comes through it, we know where it comes from, we know where it goes. And that's what you see the FBI doing now. Now they've busted Silk Road. Never underestimate disgruntled employees and financial trails. And now they're going after all these people who are, basically mailing drugs into the U.S. for years. Well, right. As far as we know. They do not fund the service. They fund the software to exist and the technology to exist. And all technology is agnostic. I've seen iPhones being used to abuse children. You can pay $1,000 an hour and watch a live abuse session of a child through Apple's FaceTime. That's not something Apple's ever going to advertise, but it's out there. And, the human trafficking pimps and the prostitutes and all these people, the victims, all use the same technologies, just completely totally different way. The aid worker comes out with a phone to say, can I take a picture, so we have it on record. And then at the same time, the pimp is doing the same thing. Can I take a picture and load it up to some photo site so I can start, selling you. And the technology is the exact same. It's just who's behind it and how they use it that matters. Okay.
While I was talking, she said she just
just in general, Tor works to enable freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and that by empowering you, the user, to be in charge of your data and your privacy, you're welcome to log. Tor does not censor anything. You can log into Facebook, you can log into Google, vContact, whatever you want. But the point is that you're in control of your data, and that's why we exist, to empower the user. Sure. It's okay. Okay, yep. Awesome. Good. Sure. Sounds great. Thank you. Bye.